The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called for the third time in as many cycles. Representatives from 17 species huddled in their environmental suits, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses that the universal translators struggled to process. "The Devourer has taken another system," announced Chancellor Vextai, her crystalline form flickering with distress patterns. The Kepler 442 colonies, 3 billion Zephyrians, gone. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. The entity they called the Devourer had been systematically consuming inhabited worlds for the past decade. It wasn't destruction in any conventional sense. Worlds simply went quiet, their populations vanishing without a trace, leaving behind empty cities and silent communication arrays. "We've tried everything," growled General Thax through his translator unit. "Quantum torpedoes, reality disruptors, even temporal displacement weapons. Nothing touches it. The thing exists partially outside our dimensional framework." "What about the humans?" The question came from Ambassador Yilna, her feathered crest rising with what might have been hope. "They're the newest council members. Perhaps their perspective, the humans." Chancellor Vextai's light patterns dimmed. "They've been silent since we brought them the data. Their representative requested access to our archives 3 days ago and hasn't responded since." As if summoned by mention, the chamber's doors hissed open. Dr. Sarah Chen walked in, her simple blue jumpsuit a stark contrast to the elaborate environmental gear surrounding her. She carried a single tablet and wore an expression that several species had learned to associate with human determination. "My apologies for the delay," Sarah said, taking her position at the human delegation's console. "We needed time to understand what we're dealing with." "And what conclusion have your scientists reached?" Chancellor Vextai asked, her tone carrying little hope. Sarah's lips curved upward, a distinctly human expression that still made some species uncomfortable. "We've determined that you're all looking at this backwards. The Devourer isn't a weapon or a force of destruction. It's afraid." The chamber fell silent. Even the constant hum of life support systems seemed to pause. "Afraid?" General Thax's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. "This entity has consumed 17 systems. It vaporized our most advanced battle fleet without effort. It consumed them because it was protecting itself," Sarah explained, manipulating her tablet to display holographic data. "Look at the pattern of attacks. The Devourer only targets worlds after they achieve a specific technological threshold. Always civilizations on the verge of developing dimensional manipulation technology." "You're suggesting it's preventing our advancement?" Ambassador Yilna's crest flattened against her skull. "I'm suggesting it's preventing something far worse." Sarah's fingers danced across the tablet, revealing calculations that made several alien mathematicians recoil. "The Devourer isn't from our dimension. It's a refugee from somewhere else. Somewhere that was consumed by entities far more terrifying than itself." The chamber erupted in overlapping translations as species tried to process this information. Sarah waited patiently for the chaos to subside. "Our theoretical physicists ran thousands of simulations," she continued. "Based on the dimensional signatures you've collected, the Devourer is essentially a living early warning system. Every time a civilization develops the technology to breach dimensional barriers, it eliminates them before they can accidentally invite something through that would consume everything." "Even if that's true," Chancellor Vextai said, her light patterns cycling through skeptical configurations, "how does this help us? The entity is still eliminating entire worlds." Sarah's smile widened and several delegates unconsciously leaned back in their seats. Humans had been part of the Galactic Council for less than a year, but already their expressions had gained a reputation for preceding dramatic events. "Because we're going to talk to it." The silence this time was absolute. Even the life support systems seemed to hold their breath. "Dr. Chen," General Thax said carefully, "this entity doesn't communicate. It appears, it consumes, it vanishes. We've tried every form of contact protocol in our databases." "You've tried every alien form of contact," Sarah corrected. "But humans have something unique in the galaxy. We're the only species that evolved as both predators and prey. We understand fear from both sides of the equation." She activated her tablet's holographic projector, showing a star chart with the Devourer's last known position. "We've prepared a ship with dimensional resonance generators. We're going to broadcast a very specific message. What message could possibly... Chancellor Vextai began. We're going to tell it that we know what it's running from, Sarah interrupted, and that we want to help it fight back. 3 days later, the UES Endeavour dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. The bridge crew, a carefully selected mix of humans and volunteers from other species, watched their sensors as reality began to warp around them. The Devourer materialized slowly, like a thought becoming solid. It was beautiful and terrible, a writhing mass of dark energy that seemed to exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Tendrils of void stuff reached out, testing the ship's defenses. Beginning transmission, announced the communications officer. Sarah stepped forward to the main view screen. She took a deep breath, looked directly at the entity that had terrorized civilizations across the galaxy and smiled. Not the predatory grin that made other species nervous or the diplomatic expression she wore in council meetings. This was something uniquely human, warm, understanding, and completely without fear. "Hello," she said simply. "We know you're scared. We know what you're protecting us from, and we want you to know that you don't have to do this alone anymore." The Devourer's assault on their shields stopped. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the entity that had consumed worlds paused. The dark energy coalesced into something almost resembling a face, ancient, tired, and infinitely lonely. When it finally spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons and the relief of a burden finally shared. "You understand?" Sarah's smile never wavered. "We're human. Understanding monsters is what we do best." "Because you are monsters too?" "No," Sarah replied gently. "Because we know what it feels like to be afraid of the dark, and we've learned that sometimes the scariest things are just looking for someone to stand with them against something even scarier." The Devourer was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, the reality distortions around it began to subside. "Will you help me guard the doors?" it asked. "We'll help you lock them," Sarah promised. "Forever if necessary." And for the first time in 10,000 years, the last guardian of a dead dimension was no longer alone. The Galactic Council would later mark this as the moment humanity truly joined the community of worlds. Not as members seeking protection or resources, but as the species willing to befriend the nightmares that kept everyone else safe.